Hello and welcome to Canvassing DFW. I am Jose on the mic, and with me as always is my lovely co-host, amazing dancer Amay. How are you doing, sweetheart?
Jose, I am great this morning. How are you?
I am doing fabulous. With us we have a friend of the show. We had some unfinished business the last time he was on, so we brought him back on to discuss some of this. Jean Dorff, how are you doing, sir?
I am doing great.
It's good to see you, man. You're looking fit. What's going on, man?
Yeah,
he does. See that? They can see you now. That's a visual aspect.
Well, let's say I'm a dancer.
There you go.
Yeah, that helps.
That's perfect.
That helps.
So when we last saw you, you obviously have quite a bit of things that are going on. As I said, we had some unfinished business, and so because after we did the show, you opened up with some information that I thought needed to be shared with our audience,
Yes.
And so along those lines, I am going to go ahead and let you go on the mic, as they say, and finish up where we left off.
Cool. Sounds good. You want me to start?
Sure.
You can start, or I can ask you a question.
Ask away.
Okay, so I would say just to start off, and I know we've already had a little bit of discussion after the podcast and today. So we're going to talk about a very difficult topic today, but one of the reasons I believe that you are a mental coach, right? Because of your own experiences and how you've overcome things. How do I say this? Okay, so we're going to talk about sexual abuse today with children. And we hope that in talking about this, that we're going to give people some tools if they are a victim of sexual abuse to get past it and thrive and not survive. I was inspired by a Facebook video that you've done the last couple of weeks, and that's why I contacted you and said, Jose and I, we need to have you back on and talk about this. So.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I say cool because, last time we talked about something that's very dear to my heart, which is dancing.
Yes.
And we specifically focused on a competition called Blackpool.
Yes.
We had a lot of fun talking about it.
Yeah.
But you also gave me the opportunity to talk a little bit about myself.
Yes.
And when I mentioned mental coaching, you asked me where it was coming from, right? Was that coming only from being a martial artist and get the proper training in being a mental coach, or was there more behind it? And I told you a little bit about my life story, and that I'm very strong in hoping to help to bring down that number of sexual abuse and domestic violence cases around the world. Specifically, I can not touch the whole world, but the world that I can.
You got to do what you can do.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm so.
And you really discuss very passionately about let's get this number down.
Yes.
Child sexual abuse.
Yes.
And.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I'm looking at the numbers out there. They seem like they're on the rise here over the last decade or so. Which is just unfathomable.
It's staggering, and you know what, Jose, the numbers sometimes are slightly different from what source you do, but that seems like nitpicking on things.
Sure.
But roughly, you could say we have about 300,000 sexual abuse cases in the United States every year, and about the same number in Europe.
Okay.
So,
wow.
Take that as a 600,000 number, and I said it on my own podcast or FaceTime thing. That's about every minute that we talk, that's one.
Yeah.
So just
wow.
wait a few seconds, and we have one.
And we have another one.
Yeah, and we have another one. So we probably do this about 40 minutes, maybe even to an hour, this talk. So that's kind of scary, right?
Yeah, it is.
That is
when you put it in that perspective, yes.
Yeah. So the 300,000, those big numbers sometimes don't even impress you anymore. But when you do it like this, and then if you hear about what the victims are, that is primarily women. So that's why I'm very strong in empowering women.
Yes.
As a man, and I hope more men have more balls, if I can say that, to do that.
You can't say that.
Right, yeah, well, you just did. So.
So next time I ask permission up front, right? To type
you know what? You can just talk away, brother.
And so that's that. And then the other scary thing is how young the victims are, and that
Yes.
brings that story right back to me.
Okay.
So I'm not only talking about that I very care about this topic, which I hope a lot of people do, and strangely enough, everyone that I do talk to cares a lot about this.
Yes.
But the other thing is, it doesn't change. So we need to do something else.
Yeah, and the first thing I think is definitely talk about it, right?
That's right.
Let's
So
get
we need to
awareness.
Get awareness, and not only women, but also the men who have been a victim or a survivor. They need to talk about it, and then they need to get what I call unbroken,
Okay.
because we are all broken people.
Yes.
But kids, or you don't even have to be a kid, but who have come across these things, you definitely can get very broken for a long time.
Okay.
And most victims, unfortunately, for the rest of their life.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be that way. And that's one of the things. So whether I was blessed with meeting the right people and doing the right things in life, it at least brought me to a point that I say there are other ways to live your life than being constantly angry, or
Okay.
have fear all the time, or of a combination of these things. Be ashamed. It could be all these things. Now, so the other thing what I think we need to do is say when we post this, let's make sure that we also post some numbers where people can get some help.
Absolutely.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
So it's not only my website, which is great,
Yes.
but there is definitely, and I will give you those numbers where people can call immediately.
That is wonderful. And what we'll do is
I'll go
we'll-
ahead and have that. It will be scrolling on the bottom here.
Yes.
that will be beautiful.
And what is your website?
My website is www.jeandorff.com. Sorry, www.jeandorff.com. JEANDORFF.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and scroll that
And you
across there.
have in front of you your computer because you're completing
Yeah.
a manuscript about tell us about your
Yeah,
manuscript.
so I'm completing a manuscript that hopefully will be soon also a book that I or we can publish. That not only tell my story, which might be an interesting thing for context, but but gives also an insight what I've been through, and what I've been fighting with, and how I overcame all this.
Great.
And I always say, let's not just survive, but let's thrive in life.
Sure.
As a mental coach, I say that to everyone, but specifically, I try to help the people who actually struggle, and it doesn't only have to be from a sexual abuse point of view, or with a sexual abuse history, but that's where my personal experience comes in.
Yes. And I think that is a strong resource for someone to speak to someone that has gone through the same things. Otherwise, I don't know if they would actually believe that the
Yeah, it
person
doesn't
in
sound
front
genuine.
Right, or no, they wouldn't believe that person could actually help them because they don't know how it feels. So I think it's terrible what has happened. I love the fact that you've turned something so terrible that's happened to you personally into helping other people. I mean, that's beautiful. You're beautiful.
Let's get to it.
Okay.
All right, off
Yeah.
you go.
Okay, so I read you the beginning of the book, and it's setting the context, right? So it was a summer day in July. There was no school, and weather was nice. Little hot maybe. Besides the laughter of playing children, it was quiet outside. I guess most people try to find some coolness in the shade of their houses. It must have been right afternoon when he asked me to follow him upstairs and into the bedroom. I was a little nervous and felt the summer heat in the small bedroom. He closed the curtains to keep the sun and the heat out, as he said. From above, in a glimpse, I saw my brother and cousins playing in the backyard. They were outside and we had the time for ourselves. Little chance that we were going to be disturbed. Gentle and with a smile, he looked at me and invited me to lay next to him in bed. The bed was too small for two people, but that didn't matter much. He must have known that it was my first time. He didn't rush anything. The softness and the saltiness of his lips made me forget where I was. And when I felt his hands all over me, I forgot everything. The sounds outside, the warmth of the summer, it all disappeared. He covered my face with his kisses. He was very gentle. I only heard his voice and the sweet tender sounds of his words, calming me down and telling me that it was all okay. It was strange to feel his skin on mine. He hushed me and said, "Let's be real quiet." It was a different playing than I expected, but I wanted to trust him, and I nervously followed his lead. His hands were going down, and I started to be afraid. Again, he said that it was all okay, but it didn't feel okay. Maybe because it was all new for me. Maybe because it was daytime, and we were all in bed. Maybe because the children from outside could come running in every moment now. Or maybe because I was 7 years old, and he was my uncle.
Wow.
This could have been a great start of a romantic story, but there is very little romance in this story. It was 1968, almost 50 years ago, and just because one man, my uncle, decided to follow his lust and selfish desires, he changed the course of my life. My uncle, whom instead of protecting me, was the one who I needed protection from.
That is pretty powerful.
So, that's that. That's how the story started, and it continued for about 5 years,
Okay.
Wow.
off and on. And if you look in time back, you could say there were incidents, right? It was not like it happened every day, so there were incidents. So that's why people sometimes minimalize in their mind what has happened. But it doesn't really matter, folks that are listening in, whether it was one time, whether it was 20 times, or in my case, maybe even countless times.
Right.
And the story, if you read my book, becomes even uglier. So there was a lot of domestic violence in our house, and there was even a time that my brother started to abuse me. So the story becomes uglier. So people say, "Wow, yeah, you have a really bad story. No wonder that you are so messed up as you are." Right?
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that.
Well, but really, the message what I want to bring across is that some people think, "Oh, it only happens to me once," or sometimes it didn't even come as far that they were truly raped. But abuse is abuse.
That's
Sure.
right. It's
Right?
wrong.
Anything that happens to you, men or women, whether it's physical, whether it's mental, that you didn't want to, right,
Right.
is abuse. So that's a very clear statement. And it has nothing to do, in my story, definitely there were maybe even moments that I enjoyed it. So that's where the shame comes in. But I was 7 years old. So for any minor, anyone under 21 in the United States, that is considered abuse, right? But even beyond that, anything, if someone just, I'm sorry, we have to say some really nasty words here, but if someone flashes at you, that is abuse, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
If someone reads stuff to you that you don't want to hear with sexual nature or violence nature, that is abuse. So let no one ever tell you differently.
Correct.
And that's the clear message. Specifically, children and women need to understand that
Right.
they set the borders, not the man.
Right.
Very seldomly the woman on the other side. They try to push your boundaries
Right.
and make that a gray area. There is no gray area. This is very black and white.
Yeah, pretty digital.
Yeah. It's
either-
very digital. It's
yeah.
either a 1 or a 0.
It's either 1 or a 0.
That's what it is.
You either
So-
accept it or you don't.
But the tricky thing here is, let me just continue just with a few paragraphs here, right? I wanted to tell it to someone. I wanted to be saved. I wanted to be not afraid. But I was more afraid of what would happen if someone would find out, especially my dad. On hindsight, he probably would have listened to me and protected me, but the environment that my dad created was not an environment of safety. He would severely punish us for really smaller things. In my mind, I did something really bad.
I see.
So, and that's typically what kids have. But also sometimes women, when they scantily clad, they walk on the street, they get raped.
Sure.
Right? And they get really nasty investigations and interrogations by the police. Now, the police has to do their work, right? But here again, if you make it a 1 and a 0, even if the woman would walk naked on the street, she never asked for it. Now, I'd say to some people, you should also use a little bit.
Well, that is the
sense.
extreme here
That
in
is
this
the
case, yes.
Yeah, use also your common sense.
Sure.
And then don't do these things, right? But the end of the day is you never ask for it, right? I hope you all saw that movie with, what was her name? I forgot.
I'll think of it. And
in the bar when
yes.
she got raped.
Yes,
and
I know exactly the movie you're talking about.
Horrible.
Yes.
Horrible. It was a
Yes.
really good example
Yes.
of she might have behaved a little bit, over the top because she was,
but it still was rape.
intoxicated.
Yeah.
But it's still rape,
Right,
guys.
yes.
And
Right.
never,
It's
ever.
not okay.
And our system, unfortunately, is not so good with that.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyhow, so that's that. That's the beginning of the book. The book is not only about my story, but I like to draw the people into, a pretty powerful stories. And my story is one of really many. So the thing is, what do you do afterwards?
Correct. I'm so glad you're bringing this up. Yeah.
So you could break this down in time periods, right? You have the period after around the age of 12. All these things kind of stopped.
Okay.
Right. I think I became taller. Became stronger.
The ability to fight off the.
Well, I never had to fight him off. Strangely enough, and I never did. So that's another shame, right? It's not why didn't I ever scream? Why didn't I punch him in the nuts or whatever?
Sure.
Right? So I never did that.
But it's confusing, isn't it, to a
That's
child?
super confusing.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that in your early days as a teen you go through. The world becomes very confusing. And for me, felt always very dangerous. I didn't trust anyone. I lost trust in everything around me, including my parents.
And family too, right?
Yeah, I would pain them, and I had my brothers and sisters around me, but the trust became a big issue. And bear in mind that I can only say this on hindsight. When I was 12, I didn't use word like trust. It's just the behavior that you have, and then later on you can translate it into issues, if you want to call it. But you have to look at, and this is a warning for parents as well. If you have a pretty outgoing kid like I am, but spend actually 90% of his time on his bed reading books, you're not talking to a smart kid. I might have been a smart kid, and maybe I still am, but I'm a very outward focused
and that's
person.
So you're saying that's out of character, and parents should look for things that are out of character.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
especially suddenly something out of character.
Things happen. So another thing is what we try to do is make parents see those signals, right? And so because that's what you want to see. And I made a quote a few years ago is, if a kid wants to talk to you, listen to him immediately. But because if you refuse to listen once, this kid might never come back.
They'll shut down.
They shut down.
Yeah, they will shut down.
I don't know. I don't want to definitely not blame my parents at all, because I don't know if they did it. We had 7 kids at home, and that's busy. That's crazy. And there were no washing machines.
Jose is
like
4
mine.
of 7. He
Yes, I understand what 7 looks like.
We talked about it, right? So there's constant chaos in the house, right? So Dad was always working. So there's not a blame in it, but the environment for a kid where this happened, and probably the predator that used that environment was just there, right? So if one of the kids could stay away from home for a day, that would be a big relief for our parents, right?
Yeah, it's
we had 7.
It's one less that you have to feed.
But they didn't know what happened, of course, when we were away.
Yes.
So those kind of things. Now, where was I? Oh yeah, I was picking up the signal. So trust was a big issue. I read a lot of stuff, but also the topics that a kid reads, right? Is another thing.
Okay.
So very early I started to look for, is there a God? Is there at least something that can tell me that the world is good? Right?
Okay.
So as a kid, I never believed that everything could be evil. Something good must be out there. That something evil happened to me doesn't mean that everything is evil, but I lived in a pretty evil environment because we had a lot of violence at home, domestic violence, and then on top of this abuse. So now, all in all, guys, this sounds really bad, but the majority of the time at home was really fun. We had great vacations and all that kind of stuff. But here it's the same thing. We sometimes use this to bring down the stories that's really bad. So no matter how good a person is, that doesn't make right what is wrong.
Correct.
That
The masking that's going on.
Right, that might lead to forgiveness, that might lead to understanding, but it doesn't make it necessarily right.
Okay.
See? So we typically do that, and specifically victims, they quickly say, "Oh yes, this happened, but
I see.
Yeah, my dad hit us really badly, but he tried to do his best." Okay, that's good. My younger sister was never part of that domestic violence, and she asked me just actually this summer. She said, "Jean, and to my other sibling, why can you not forgive Dad about what he did to you guys?" I said, her name is Jackie. I said, Jackie, of course we forgave him a long time ago, because if we didn't forgave him, we would not come home at all anymore.
Right.
Right? We did forgive him, but that doesn't mean that it didn't affect us. And the fact that we can talk about it is much healthier than trying to keep it all down.
Yeah, keep it all repressed.
Yeah, now of course, I want to protect my dad as well. He's now old, and it's time to bring these stories out for the help for other people.
Yes.
Right? So that's the same thing with the abuse. We start to just read things that maybe are a little bit also out of character for a young kid. So I clearly remembered a discussion with my dad when, because I was always either found in the library seriously or just with a stack of books, and he always said, "Why do you always read this stuff about paranormal things, or about God, or about those kind of things?" It was all my big interest. Now a lot of people have those interests, by the way. I'm not the only one, but I can clearly say that people with, let's say, an unhealthy interest in paranormal things, I can almost guarantee something went on in their life.
Wow.
Yeah, I can almost guarantee. So I never did scientific research, guys, so that's kind of the disclaimer here, right?
Right. It's been your experience as you talk to people, right?
But it's my experience, and it doesn't always have to be as ugly as sexual abuse, but it could be, the search for something because something was unstable at home. So, enough research topics, guys, if you want to, for your...
I'm sure the internet's full of this stuff up there somewhere. It's just Google.
We can research. So those were the things. The other things that we do is we start to keep secrets, right? We start to be more and more closed. Now, other kids, and I have to tell you this, I'm not the only one in the family who has been abused by that same uncle. We only found out until we're far in our adulthood, which is kind of really weird, is we keep secrets for each other. And depending a little bit on your character, one person can become more violent, the other one, can become like me, very closed. Well,
I imagine the shame that you feel keeps the secret in there, that you don't want to share this thing with anybody.
Yeah, if it is shame that hits you.
Right.
So there are actually basically, I'm sorry about that noise, but there are actually a few areas that all sexual abuse victims have to deal with. Fear is one of them, and it's very easy to understand, right? But the fear is like, there's the fear to be alone with this person, so that's a very easy thing to pick up.
Yeah.
Shame is a little bit harder to understand, right? Because
certainly at an early age, because you don't know what it is.
You don't know what it is, but strangely enough, shame hits you really quickly.
You just don't know what it is.
Yeah, for some reason, instinctively, you know that sex should not be part of your life yet.
Right.
So you do something that is so out of being a child. But so that's where it screws you up really quickly and really fast, is you are so young confronted with something adults needs to be dealing with.
Right.
And that's sex. And so shame is really quickly in there. But shame is quickly also because my uncle gave me often money. So that's another part of shame. Like, wow, I kind of allowed it afterwards. That shame came afterwards, right? When I was a little bit more mature and could think about these things, like, wow, I kind of accepted it. Shame comes also in because it was not always bad, right? Because he was really skillful in creating some sort of a friendship between us.
I see.
Wow.
Right? So
Manipulating.
it was not an awful guy who would tie you down and do his business, right? It was really, he was always charming me and trying to play me until he could do his business. I mean, you have to picture that. It doesn't always, we like to think about rape as that's always violent, and it's not. It really is not. And it's in many cases very skillful people.
Well, it's manipulating is what he's doing now.
Definitely.
Clearly.
And so that's another shame. Shame was also because one of my brothers started to call me a faggot. And I had no idea what that was. So that's a shame. There was a shame of being confused of what my sexual nature was. There's also a shame. Now, there's nothing wrong being gay or not gay, but being confused about it constantly is gay people in general have that in a certain period often, right? That because it's not the norm, so to speak. People cannot see that I'm making this, but I had it at least.
Yes, they can.
Yeah. Actually, yes, we can. So if that would not come because I was an adolescent, then it probably would have been driven by what happened with me. Because after all, I had sex with a man. Now, if you grow up in an environment like me in Europe, it's a little bit easier to talk about that you had sex with a man than when you are in Texas here.
Yeah, well, they're a little less open-minded down here.
Yeah, so sexually abused men sometimes are ashamed to talk about it because they had sex with a man, even if it was not because of their choice.
Right.
So shame is a weird animal. So that's one thing. The other thing is the feeling that you are the only one. You're the only one that's the victim of that uncle. And that's what abusers all use. By nature, abusers try to, isolate you.
Well, they have to.
They have to, of course.
So they're a predator for a reason.
Yeah, right? But you do it to yourself as well.
Right.
So you really, for the longest time, actually until I was far in my 20s, I literally believed that I was the only one abused by my uncle. And then, of course, if you think about it, then you think, wow, Jean, that's really naive to think that. Yeah, it is. But that's so ingrained from a younger age on. So I told my partner at the time what happened. And she happened to talk to my sister around these topics. And my sister got triggered, told her story about my uncle. And then we said, oh my gosh. And my sister is about 4 years older than I am. 6, actually. Although she doesn't want to know that, but she's 6 years old.
We just won't say your age.
Yes, we don't want to say my age.
Yeah, you're 20.
Yes. So, and then we said, oh my gosh, right? We should. So, if it's you and if it's me, then can we be the only one? Now, the story, got unfolded that more of our family members were victim of this man.
Wow.
So that feeling of that being alone in that and wanting to keep that a secret, that's just that's very common with younger kids. Now and then last but not least, so I talked about shame and alone and guilt, and the last is we start to become very fatalistic. Everything that happens to you happens to you.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do about it.
It happens for a reason.
No reason. That's just
it just happens.
A fatalistic person believes that it just happens to you, and because of the violence that you had in your life, and you just were taken whenever this guy's pleased to take you, right? You believe that you have nothing to say in your life anymore. Everything just happens to you. Very fatalistic point of view. Can you see that? That's a little bit harder thing to see, but now that I explain it, you can see that, and you can see also the behavior of people that they believe, oh, everything that happens to me,
Okay.
What can I do about it?
Right.
It is what it is.
You throw your hands up at this point.
You throw your hands up at this point, right? I literally do it.
Yeah.
But I did it as a kid so often because I thought, man.
No,
for some reason, I don't know why, guys. I always started to fight these points, maybe because I read about it so much, and there were some significant points that had relevance to this story. So when I was about 17 years old, and I had so much hate and anger in me, and I wanted to let it out. I became an awesome martial artist, so that was one place where I could let it out. I don't want to say that I fought a lot on the street. That was just not in me, but I could as well have done. I know that once I put a guy seriously in a hospital, which made me turn around and see that violence can never be the answer to anything. And so there was a turning point. But at 17, I started to really see, man, I just cannot stay angry all the time. It's just, and I cannot stay in my head all the time. That just doesn't make any sense, right? So this has nothing to do with science or something. Just a feeling of forgiveness came over me. I really felt first what forgiveness was.
That must have been very difficult then.
It was. Before I actually could explain it to someone else. And I had to forgive.
Well, that makes sense.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
But I must also say that after all these years that I talked to my sister, which I have a lot of good contact with, she never came to the point.
Oh, so she never crossed that bridge.
She never could came to the point.
Why do you think that is?
It is because we get so attached to the anger that the anger sometimes also becomes part of us. And we start to identify ourselves with our own stories. And how hard it is, we are never our stories. Right? That's the really hard thing. Yeah, but it's really bad what I sometimes say, I didn't tell you half what I've been through.
Okay.
But it's one thing to tell your story like I did today.
Yes.
Which a lot of people say, oh, Jean, that's so bad. And they actually enforce that I am becoming my story. But I am not my story, right?
Right.
I might be who I am because of my story.
Yes.
But I can still make new choices.
And you said to me at another occasion that you wanted your story to be 5%
Yes.
of your life.
That's right.
And 95% of your life is what?
Yeah. 95% is the thing that we do looking forward.
Okay.
Right? I do. I mean, I never choose the circumstances I was in.
Right.
But I always say you can always choose what you do in those circumstances. Now, when you're really young and you're tainted by all these issues, then actually those skills are trumped. Right?
Okay. Yes.
So because of the shame, because of the thinking that you're alone, because of the fatalism that I talked about, because of the guilt. So you lose those skills of making really wise choices in life. Now, to get out of that, sometimes you need to have some help.
Okay.
Now, a book can be a help. A good understanding friend can be help. It could be professional. There are a lot of good professionals out there.
Well, I was going to ask you that because you earlier you mentioned that basically you had people that you sought out or whatever it is to help you through this. Who are these people that you leaned on? I guess.
Yeah, the strange thing is I never wanted to have any professional help, and it's partly because of the shame. I didn't want to. I thought I was a little bit arrogant of my own intellect. I thought, I was very firm in saying anything that happened to me in the past will never be an excuse for what I do in the future. You can quote me on that.
Trademark.
And but I came to a point much later in life. So there was the second phase, right? You have the teen phase where I came through these things, and then you go into your adulthood and you try to live a normal life, and then you start to see things in your life that don't go so well.
Okay.
So a big point is your relationships. Your relationships are really suffering from just because your relationships are not healthy. You never learn to it. I never learned to have what it means to have a healthy sex life, to be honest.
Okay.
Sex was very screwed up, right? So I don't know. And especially in our generations, we didn't get any sex education, period, right?
No, we didn't.
Wouldn't even talk about it.
Nope.
So that doesn't help there either. But mood swings, I often fell back into tremendous bad thoughts all the way up to suicide.
Wow.
Which is common.
Yeah.
And that might have been also true even if I would not have that. That's a little bit hard to distinct, right? How would you have been if you would not have been through all this?
But you really feel like that it was
yeah.
What you had gone through that caused you to feel that way, that bad.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Escapism is another thing. We quickly want to give up on things and flee away because, you don't want to be in a situation that is dreadful for you, because we have been in so many already. So if we can go away, so we don't become people that really get in there, solve the problems with our relationships that we have, and ultimately, so we have a really hard time on facing our own problems in life. So we become very often self-obsessed, becoming our story, feeling a victim, and everyone tells you that you have the right to be a victim. So if you do one of my coaching programs, you will notice that actually I'm the most unfriendly sexual abuse coach that you can meet, because I don't want you to get stuck in your story. Yes, we talk about it, and it's really bad.
Yes.
And it could be way worse than I have.
Yes.
But do you make a choice today to move forward?
Yeah,
or
don't
do
let
you
it.
want to stay
Yeah,
in here?
don't let it control you.
Don't ever let it control you. But be also aware that there are times that it will hit you. So strangely enough, if there is a movie out there I know it's about sexual abuse, I have to see it. There's something really weird in me. I have to see it. And I always ask someone with me that I'm really comfortable with, that knows my story, that knows how to deal with the triggers that I get.
Okay.
So I have that. So you get tools. You need to have tools. It's not so a thing that, I'm not sure if I still make any sense, but
You're
I think
making
that
perfect sense.
Yeah,
I think
that's a
that-
support system that you have to have.
Yes, right. But sexual abuse victims often, or abuse victims in general, we want the pain to go away.
Yes.
We want to forget it completely. Now, through traumatic experience, you sometimes forget things. I just actually helped someone who was completely out of her memory that she was raped one day. Can you imagine that? So, but in general, we kind of really know what happened, and we want to forget that. We definitely want to get away of the pain that we had, because we don't talk about it. But you have to imagine, 7 years old, there was a little guy.
Sure.
Now, my uncle was not, let's say a big guy, but everything he had was too big for me, if you know what I mean.
Right.
So I don't want to be graphical, but,
Sure.
but sometimes
we
we
get it.
have to see how ugly it is before we really understand that has to change, right?
Right.
It was not the kissing that hurt,
Right.
right?
Right.
So it's not only the mental pain; it's also the physical pain, and it's often you feel that. And just recently, someone and I didn't know that was in me. So this person just touched me on my face, and I got hugely triggered. I didn't want to be touched there at all, and I just threw everything away. And so we do have trigger points in ourselves. And I always say, it's like I have a button on my back. I just don't know where it is.
I see.
And suddenly someone accidentally pushed that button in,
Yeah, get you.
and everything falls apart.
Yeah.
So what are the tools that you use when you're triggered like that? And
Yeah. So the tools that you use is sometimes it surprised me, but you have very simple things like breathing techniques.
okay.
You recognize, I'm going back in my story.
Okay.
I'm going to cry right now. So I always say, and that's definitely also a principle that I use in the other coaching, is accept first what you are. Accept your emotion as it is. I'm angry. Okay, I notice I'm angry. Okay, I notice I'm very sad. So that's a really good tool to really accept the emotion that you're in, instead of immediately trying to solve it and push it away. Because if you push it away, guess what? It will always come back. If you embrace it, you can do something with it, and often it's very small. Right?
Understand it, basically, is what you're saying. Yeah.
Most of the people that trigger you don't want to trigger you. They just don't know what's happening to you.
Yeah, they don't know what they just did.
This person actually did not know what was going on.
Yeah.
She actually wanted to be very friendly, and I just got hugely triggered, and I pushed her away. So these things we have all in us, and I noticed that's not only true for sexual abuse people. That is true for a lot of people. You're a dance teacher, by the way. You know this, right? Some people you can take by the hand and you walk, and other people you think, what's going on?
Yeah,
here,
they have,
right?
as my mother said, a bigger bubble.
Yeah, they have a bigger bubble, right? So we all have that
Okay.
already. There's a lot of things that we need to have that to protect ourselves. These things are just all screwed up by victims, right?
I see.
So what I said. So I in my later life, I had mood swings. I was chasing for truth. I still was on my search, like, is there something really good out there, because I only see evil.
I see.
Right? And so the more I start to read about it, the more I start to also practice mindfulness and meditation. I came to really good points in my life, except, one point it went, I probably felt that I had to deal with something more without knowing it, and that was when I was around 40.
Okay.
So I think we have to talk about age.
Had to drop a number on there for you.
Yeah. So I mean, all the way from 20 to 40, I think I lived some sort of a good life.
Okay.
I was reasonable, successful in my career. I was already I found dancing already. But here's another interesting point in the book that I try to do. I kind of, in myself, knew that I was not fully living through my core.
Okay.
Even I found dancing, I danced often to please someone else.
So maybe not even truly happy then.
Yeah. So there was this outward thing that I built up. I had a good career. I had a house, we had cars, we had kids, we had all these things, and everything looked perfect, right? I had dancing as my passion, and what's almost more beautiful than that. We talked about that, right?
Yes.
But I felt I did a lot for other things. I wanted to please a lot of other people.
Okay.
Right, and so. Strangely enough, at the age of around 40, that didn't sit well with me. And I talked to a business coach of mine. And she said, wow, I hear you talking about, your dad a lot lately, and you're a little bit off. And she said, would you be willing to talk to someone that I know really well? You can trust her, Sean. I said, sure. And I said, but you know what I think about psychologists, right? He said, yeah, sure, I know that by now. She's a psychologist, by the way.
Okay.
And but anyhow, I took her advice. I felt something was wrong. I couldn't I couldn't really.
You were out of sorts.
Yeah, I was a little bit. I became very tired. So I didn't know that I was keeping myself up every day. You don't know it anymore, because the state that you're in becomes so normal for you that you push it so far until you break. Now I hope people that you don't wait till you break, and I certainly hope that it doesn't have to take until you're 40.
Right.
Strangely enough, when you're strong, like I was, mentally and physically, you can push it out really long, but it will break one day.
Right.
It broke with me when I was 40.
Did it?
And it did.
Okay.
It did. And I went to a psychologist here in Dallas, a wonderful person, and we didn't need a lot of sessions, to be honest. And because he knew exactly what I was talking about. I was blessed with doing my own work already, without knowing it. The forgiveness that I talked to you about.
Yes.
The mindfulness practices, the meditation, always being fit and being busy with healthy stuff.
And you have a strong faith in God.
And I have a strong faith in God too,
Yes.
right? So all the things, without knowing it, I accidentally did, right?
I see.
From a character point of view, I'm an empathic person. That helps, right? It helps because I feel very connected to emotions. So I had to deal with strong emotions. So I had that sense of embrace your emotion first, and then we deal with it. I had that already. Now I put it in my coaching practice.
Yeah.
But without knowing it, I accidentally did a lot of things in the right way.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
What this person did with me, and that's definitely something that I use now in my practice, is to connect the passion that I had closer to the core, and that definitely brought me to a healing. Once I felt, man, I'm so super pumped for one thing in my life, which was dance and movement.
Yes.
I had something really to go after, and I did it all for myself. And it
Instead of for other people.
And it sounds selfish, but because I did it for myself, I became really more available as a teacher.
Oh, wow.
So
success came to you because you started working hard.
You kind of recognize that at the beginning as a teacher, you try to do everything correct, and now you think, this is my method, this is how I believe it is.
There's a method to your madness.
Yeah, and so.
Well, you focus is what you're doing, in this case, you refocus.
Yeah. So God, of course, for me was strong. Was I never angry with God? I am, and sometimes I still am.
Okay, that's
so
honest.
there are definitely points that I might get another invitation if we talk about God, but we are all broken people, and I was definitely broken at the time, and I was angry at God because I still cannot completely understand if there is a God. Why would he let us seven?
Why would he allow this to happen?
Yeah, why would he allow this
That's
to happen?
That's a question that I hear a lot.
Yeah,
that is a question I hear a lot.
Yeah, and it's a very understandable question, and I struggled with that a lot until I really understand what the love of God means. And I also really understand that God wants to give us that freedom of choice and responsibility. Otherwise we become robots from him, and that's not what he wants. He created us in his image, and his image is that you create, and you can only create if you have full freedom. And if you have full freedom, that means that other people can make really bad choices.
And full freedom because of forgiveness, right?
Yes. And I don't know always why that is. I don't know why people need to go through a hardship to, find something on the other side.
And what was the hardship when you were 40?
Well, the hardship when I was 40 is that I start to lose ground. I just couldn't. The world didn't make sense anymore. I felt really unhappy.
Okay.
With I think a wonderful wife and definitely 2 wonderful kids. And I had everything. I had a house with 5 bedrooms and 4 baths, and we had everything. So if you would paint a picture, you think, man, there is nothing to be unhappy about. And
right.
The more people said how happy I should be and how successful I was, the more I start to see that it felt hollow. Right? It felt hollow, and I couldn't understand why, and I was ashamed to say that. Because and I bought another suit to show how successful I was, and I did another business trip too. So I really start to live far out of my core, and one day I just literally, this goes a little bit in a different direction than I actually intended, but that's kind of the nice with the podcast.
Sure.
So one night
you have the freedom to move around.
Yeah. So one night I think for the first time in my life I prayed, and I was angry with him. So I prayed angry, and I said to him, I used some F words there, and I said,
that's some real anger, buddy.
I was angry, and then I always consulted God, and I gave him advice. So that's kind of a normal thing. So I'm one of those people, right? Hey, if you know.
And by the way, while you're sitting there on your throne here, think about this.
Exactly. So, and I said, can you make any sense of this, of what it's doing? And then the only thing I heard. And sometimes when I read back, I wrote down what happened to me that night. I actually sometimes think that I was completely delusional or whatever it is. But for whatever the story is worth, it's maybe worth to write that too in the book, is I heard him constantly say, you still don't know how to ask questions.
Oh.
Wow.
Right? That's the only thing I heard. And remember the Bible said, ask and you shall receive, right? Mm-hmm. So I was constantly giving him consult instead of consulting him. Yeah. I was constantly advising him. That was my, modus operandi for praying, right?
Oh.
And so I said, it's that easy. So I ask and then you give it to me. So I was almost like that, right? And then he said, well, I thought, man, maybe I should give it a try. And I asked him, and then he answered, and he answered in a big way. And that was the first time that I thought, whoa, that was mind blowing. I said, wow, that's
so what did you ask, and what was
well, I asked God, what is the purpose of all this, right? What is I need to know what the purpose of my life is, because I honestly am at a point that if I don't see a purpose in my life, I don't think life is worth it. And I know the most acceptable social answer is wife and kids, but for some reason that was not the answer for me. I know I have the responsibility to them, and I knew that. But that's cognition. That was not heartfelt. I knew there needs to be something that points me north. Mm-hmm. That gives me a direction.
Yeah, you needed to get refocused is what it is.
Yeah.
So what was the answer?
Oh my gosh, you make it a suspense thing. But the answer was really weird. I was talking on. Instead of giving me words or something, he opened it up, and I found myself talking on a big stage talking to people, and I was announcing someone, I don't know who or what, because strangely enough that was not revealed, but I felt that, and it felt really powerful. And for a moment I thought, wow, yeah, finally I got famous, and I'm on a big stage, and there are thousands of people yelling, Jean, 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 Jean. But no, none of that all happened. I was just an announcer, and a commentator, but I felt really good. I said, man, that's good. And from that moment on, I say to people often, I'm a messenger, right? I give messages to people, and I literally do. I sometimes meet strangers, and I have a message for them. So I do that, but and there was more revealed, and there was a moment that I saw my uncle, and he allowed me to talk to my uncle. My uncle passed away, and so I always thought, my uncle would have, he has regretted what he did. He did not.
No.
He did not at all. He said,
not at all.
I asked him. He said, I didn't even know he had all this pain. He did not. That was like, oh my gosh. He said, that's the weirdest thing, right? Because you want these people. Oh, they are good people. No, we have to understand there are evil people out there.
Yes, there are evil
They
people
are
out
people,
there.
and I'm sorry, and maybe they lost their way, but that's not my responsibility.
No,
right?
it isn't.
And they probably have their stories too. I'm sure of it,
Yeah.
but it's not my responsibility. There are evil people out there, and I started to see these things, and maybe became a little bit more stronger in these points. That you have to be careful. So that was revealed, and that all happened. I don't know how it happened. That was one night, but when I woke up, I was exhausted, and I thought, okay, what just happened? Oh, maybe I was delusional or something. I definitely didn't drink any alcohol, so that couldn't have been it. But strangely is I walked, so this is me, right? I said, okay, God, there was a really good message, but can you now give me some sort of a signal that it was all true? So that's typically me. And I went to work, and I met a colleague in the hallway, and she said, Jean, I have to talk to you. And I said, okay, but I have to talk to you too. It's something last night. She's a fellow Christian. So I said, I have to tell this to someone before I lose it all. So we went to a Starbucks, close by here actually. and to make a long story short, she saw me that night in a dream.
Wow.
And the dream was, she saw me on stage, talking to a big, massive amount of people, announcing someone. So she said, I don't know why, but it was so vivid, and I had to tell you this. So this was my signal of. So he even listened to
God
me.
Works in mysterious ways, right?
My complaining of not being, and that happened to me.
Listen to your
Listen to my complaints. So I already had good faith in God. By the way, guys, I don't think I need any proof anymore for myself. That he is there, and it's really hard to grasp. But for me, is when you understand that word love, and if you allow love back in your life, real love, then good things can happen, and that's one of the most powerful healing areas you can find yourself into. And that means you need to lose your anger and your shame and your fear, because often we run away from God because we are fear. We believe that we have to fit in a certain thing. We have to do something. Right now, He doesn't want us to do anything. It's nothing to do with us, as I always say. It's all to do with Him. But we definitely have some shame. If we have some shame that we did maybe some sinful things,
Sure.
right, then we think we cannot face God. So that's another thing why people...
Or the anger.
Or another thing, anger. Yeah. How could you, if you're so good, allow this? Now, the same thing could happen to your parents, right? God, sometimes also God's father. Sometimes you can also say that to your father, if you're such a good man, how come it that you didn't protect me from this evil man? Right? I never felt that anger. By the way, I was angry at him because he beat us up, but I never felt that anger. By the way. Actually, I tried to protect my parents for the longest time, to not let them feel that they actually didn't achieve in protecting us.
I see.
So, but I could.
That's a big responsibility that someone carries around, right?
I don't think that as a kid we should have taken that responsibility. And my sisters and brothers, without knowing it from each other, we did the same thing. Mm-hmm. And then when we actually knew each other's story, we started to make that pact and say, let's never talk to our parents about this. And
okay.
actually, till the day, my parents are still alive, but they're really old. My dad is 94 and my mom is
Wow.
89, and she has Alzheimer. Actually, until the day, that's the one thing I wish I did. I wish I just told him. Because no matter how, I mean, they are my parents, and they should know. I don't want to have secrets from my parents. I don't want them to bring to their last resting place. And just there's one thing that I always wanted to tell you that. So I told him that I hated him for beating us up all the time, but I should have also come forward to him and telling this another thing, guys, just to open your mouth to especially the people that you love. It's a huge healing thing. And there was some crying involved, and we can give some consult to people who, to family members as well, because remember, don't let the people get stuck in their story,
Right.
but listen to them well, right? Listen, not immediately say, okay, don't tell your story. No, people need to tell their story.
Yeah, they come forward. That's part of the healing.
But after a little while, let's say, okay, now we know your story, and once in a while we come back to that story, like I do today. And then you could see almost on my body language, it changes me a little bit when I tell these things, right? But at some point in time, when you know that you can also get a lot of empowerment from it, I think I'm blessed that I really know what forgiveness is. Okay. I think I'm truly blessed.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah.
So, do you think sometimes people get stuck in their story because they want something to happen to the person that hurt them?
Yeah, well, here again, I'm not a psychologist, so I can only tell what I experience and what I feel as a coach. So one thing is people are hoping that the pain always go away, completely away, and that is definitely something. Don't shoot for that. The pain will always be there. Okay. And maybe there are cases where the pain goes away, but in my experience and the people that I talk with, the pain will always be there. And that's
you can't let that thing go. I mean, not completely.
So it's like you lost a child, which is horrible, or you lost your mom and dad. That pain will always be there, but it doesn't mean you cannot move forward. Right. Okay. You move forward despite of. So that's I think that's one of the strongest thing. The other thing is really much harder to talk about, Jose and MA, is that we can become we can victimize ourselves completely. Okay. And then we become...
Well, that's easy to do.
That's easy to do. And a nastier word to use is then we become self-obsessed. And that's a really nasty word, because then you say, oh, okay, so you think I behave like this, and don't you know what I've been through, and I've all the right to be like this and squander my life and, be nasty to my kids and, don't have good relationships. So you have all the right to do that. No, I really understand why you do that, but you still don't have the right to do that to another person, no matter what you do.
Don't take it out on them.
Don't take it out on them. And that's really hard, but if we don't do these hard discussions, you don't get yourself through it. And you do that nicely. I mean, most of the people that I talk to actually have a lot of fun when I say, oh my gosh, I was so self-obsessed against you. Oh, yes, you were. And, yeah. I mean, it's really fun, but we do that, right? I mean, you've been to competitions. And, yes. And in competitions, you see that you really know, because you're a pro-am teacher, you know when someone really has pain, or, because of an injury, or they start to limp suddenly, and and it's kind of they start to. It's weird. We all do that. We all think, and then you say, "Oh, come on, you can do it," and then suddenly they dance, and everything is forgotten.
Yeah, pain goes away.
That moment, so that's what I call trigger. That happens to all of us, even in me. When I come and I feel these things, and I try to have excuses, and I try something, and say, "Oh, but you don't know what happened to me." No. You're right. I don't know. How can I know, right? And why should I know? Right. I can only judge you on what you produce today.
All right.
Yeah. And
that is some good stuff right there.
And that's hard, but it's very empowering. And if you do that in the right way, and we do it now, like in 40 minutes, we go rush through this. So that's what I'm trying to tell. That yes, tell your story as much as you can, and we need to bring this down. And men, we need to take our responsibility, men, because we talked about that 90%, if not more, is women, and a big part of that is also children. But unfortunately, the men, it's 99% of the abusers.
Yeah, predators.
Men.
Yeah, so, I can see that.
So, and the men, it's not only that they don't dare to talk about it, that it happened to them, But what's a harder discussion is to talk openly what goes through our mind. That we want to watch porn and that we are very obsessed with these things called sex. Now, of course, Jose, you and I are not one of those people. I never meet anyone who does that unless we started at church a men group where we decided, okay, no topic is off the table. Every topic will be there, and we just say it out loud. And we start to talk about this topic, because if we don't change men, right?
Well, that's what it's got to start.
Yeah, I mean, I want to empower women. I think I'm a little stronger in that area, but men need to step up.
Yep, absolutely.
I love that. Well, I do want to say a couple things. So you completing your manuscript. So we're putting that out there. We will be putting your website on the screen, and you're looking for a publisher to pick up that manuscript so that we can spread your story, spread the healing.
Yeah.
We will also provide some numbers and websites for.
We will certainly be disseminating that information to you. Yes.
So you can get help. But the first thing was to talk about it, and we thank you for telling your story, because communication is the first thing. Let's start talking about a very difficult topic.
Very difficult.
So that
topic.
we can now.
No, you got to be a strong person to come out and start telling your story like that. That's a fact.
Can I ask for one little favor?
Certainly.
Absolutely.
Since you talked about publisher, and there are a lot of good publishers out there, and I used to work in publishing myself, but I'm really picky here. I want to have a publisher that has that same heart for this cause as the people around this table.
That does help.
So it's not just printing a book, because we can do that ourselves, right? It's about really pushing this book, and it's not for money, by the way, but it's for the speaking opportunities and making these stories known. And so if there is a publisher who will hear this and want to help us with that cause, then I think that's exactly the publisher that we're looking for. Now I believe in God, so He will probably send me that publisher on our way. But the podcast will definitely help.
Anything we can do to spread the word, man.
God
Absolutely.
will use our podcast.
Yes.
All right. With that, John, we thank you for coming on and telling your story, dude. I'm telling you, that's just strong. And we're hoping that we can reach out to people and get this thing, if not solved, at the very least slowed down. Thank you for being on.
Thank you very much.
Lovely May. Thank you for being on as well.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you, Jean.
Thank you again.
Alrighty. This has been another episode of Canvassing DFW. I am Jose on the mic. We will catch you on the flip.